Okay, hi guys. Welcome back. As promised, this is my next video. Uh, each one of you who has subscribed to me or who is listening to this video, who knows what I do, knows that I prepare small tutorials, mainly pitfalls, where I discuss those problems that I faced when I was doing my post graduation in various fields of pathology. I have started with hematopathology and now continued with cytopathology. And slowly I'll start with histopathology also and special techniques like IHC, flow, and fish. So I won't waste too much time in introducing the what I do. Uh, to those who follow my tutorials, you know that I had discussed pap smear benign lesions the last time, and I had told you that I'll be instead of taking a hematopathology tutorial, I'll be doing the malignant lesions in continuity, and then finishing up with pap smears and then go back to hemat. So in that series only, let us start with the malignant lesions and the problems that I faced as a postgraduate and you would also be facing maybe. So let's begin without wasting too much time. Alright, in the video on benign lesions in pap smear, I have discussed, please if you have not seen it, please go and see it there because this is a continuity to that. So I had discussed the type, the method, the procedure, the patient preparation, the types of brushes, the types of smears, how you have to fix it, etc. etc. I had not discussed the methodology of doing a pap stain. It is done in all the labs. There are rapid pap kits, there are manual pap staining done. So that is a part of your curriculum. You will be made to do those stains. You should do those stains when you are wherever you are studying your postgraduate from, or if you are a young pathologist. This is a routine stain, so I have not taken it up in detail. And maybe later on, if someone asks me, I can do troubles in the stainings that you do in histo and cyto and hemat, where you have trouble in. Look, in general, I can tell you that staining procedures are mentioned in all the good technical histo technology books, but each and every lab, each and every technician modifies the method according to his lab. That is a known secret, not a secret actually. That book may, whatever is written, it is there, but each technician who's putting that stain has his own method of doing it. He might change the time, he might change the concentration, the basic steps remain the same, but there are variations, so it's better if you practice them in your lab and learn it from there. So the last time I had also told you how a pap smear is taken. This image that I found from Adams, it is there on the net. This will give you a much better representation of what the cervical os looks like and how we approach the cervical os with the cytobrush. In this image, what has happened is the vaginal wall, this little part over here, this was the vaginal wall part only. I mean, this is near the cervix. This is the cervical os. This thing. The in this is, I mean, this is at the entire cervix, and this is the os. This is one lip. This thing, and this thing is the other lip. And the cytobrush goes towards this os. And I had told you this is a cytobrush. I have used IR spatula when I was doing my MD. Sorry, the image is very bad. So this one end would go inside and the other end would stay outside, and then we would rotate it 180-degree like this and take the smear. Okay, so this was, see, so this is the outside of the female, the entire perineal region, and this is what the cervical os would look like. I also wanted to show you that I had mentioned something about conventional smears, thin prep, and sure path. This is an exam question. So what I'm going to do is just in short tell you the differences between the three, and this is how the three different smears look like. This image over here, this one. So quickly going to the differences. The conventional smear, it is fixed by ethanol. It is smeared on site. I've shown you all this. It is a random distribution, of course, of the cell sample, because whatever material you get on the brush, you are just smearing it. Collection device is a brush, a spatula or an endocervical brush. I've shown you that also. Preservative artifacts will be there because nothing has been done to process the sample. You've just taken the thing and smeared it on the slide. So air drying can be there. The cells might appear large. Air dried cells appear large. Blood, a lot of blood and in obscuration by inflammation, debris, mucus, you'll get all that. And automated processing of this sample is not possible. So this slide over here, this shows you what a conventional smear looks like. Okay, coming to thin prep. Thin prep is fixed by methanol. Collection again, I had told you this last time that the brush is rinsed in the fluid in the vial. A 20 mm slide has a uniform distribution. Okay, all artifacts are greatly reduced. That is the reason I had told you last time why these methods are used, because inflammation and debris and excess blood all is washed off. And vacuum pressure is used through transite filter for automated processing. They do it through vacuum processing and all the debris is removed, and the circle that is made is of a 20 mm circle. Okay, so something like this would come out. So this is a thin prep. Okay, so you see this is a haphazardly distributed smear with a lot of blood and mucus. Here you can see a clean background and only the main material which you want to see. Sure path fixed in cytorich or ethanol. Sample device. In sure path you break off the device and put it in the fluid. It gives you a small 13 mm circle. Again, cervical brush tip disposed into the vial. That is the method you collected. Again, the same. All artifacts are greatly reduced, and this works on gravity sedimentation process. So both these processes are good, and both these smears are quite good to examine. We have a thin prep for routine fluid also. We do it for fluid cytology. This I've shown you the Bethesda system of reporting, and what I'll be doing is moving on from the benign to the malignant. Like the squamous cell malignant, I had shown you till the organisms. Now what I'm going to show you is the malignancy. So if we want to see, have to comment upon squamous cell irregularities, then we have to see what atypical squamous cells are there or whether invasive carcinoma is there or not. Glandular cells, we have to see whether atypical glandular cells are there. Then is it NOS? Then what category of atypical glandular cells will it fall in? You can see and decide in situ carcinoma is there or a full-blown carcinoma is there or not. So this general writing protocol I've already shown you. Each one of you must be having it in the institute. Some format might be a bit altered as per the taste of the institute, but this is the basic format, and all its components of this Bethesda format should be there in your report in the same order. You can change the font plus minus a few things, but you don't have to touch this order too much. Adequacy had discussed. See, this is an adequate slide. Not satisfactory. When will you give? When it is less than 8,000 on conventional smears and less than 5,000 in the liquid based preparation like thin prep and sure path. Greater than 75% of the slide has just inflammation or blood, and if a single cell is atypical, it should not be reported as unsatisfactory. I had shown these things last time also. So this is too hypocellular, this is too obscured, so all this is unsatisfactory. So here that cutoff of 8,000 cells, and here the greater than 75%, sorry, this thing I can't write, 75% inflammation is there. Okay, this also had taken, this is a normal superficial cell, means it mimics this area. Coming to the intermediate cells, they have a caterpillar like nuclear grooving like this. Okay, this corresponds to this area. Then parabasal cells mimic atypical glandular cells at times when you get confused. They correspond to this area, and then come clusters of basal cell or reserve cells just below the basal cells. This is the area. And in my practice, when I was doing MD, these two were the most confusing for me. Quite often I would confuse it with a glandular cell when I was in my postgrad. So yeah, this was my pitfall. So how I differentiated it was a lot was training of my eyes to differentiate. But I used to see that this has a parabasal cell if compared to a glandular cell is is in loose clusters or scattered. A, and glandular cells are in clusters routinely, and it has a little more ample cytoplasm, a round nucleus, and maybe sometimes this keratinish pinkish hue. So that is something that I used to catch to differentiate it from a glandular cell. Basal cell, yes, I had lots and lots of problems in differentiating because they used to come in clusters like this. So either I would look at that picket fencing, the ciliated end, to look at an endocervical. You all know that endocervical clusters, not exactly ciliated. I'm sorry, it's not a pleural fluid, but that picket fencing appearance of the columnar cuboidal epithelium or the honeycombing. That is what I used to look for, because parabasal cells are in clusters, but they do not honeycomb. Okay, so honeycombs mean there are clusters and then there are spaces and then there are clusters and there are spaces. That is honeycombing. I'll show you. It is there. This is very important. I had missed it the last time. So I have incorporated it here. In Indian scenario, it is plus minus a bit. When you do if you've done you have done your gynecology. There's no if and a but about it. You must remember a few points from there. But I just wanted to refresh your mind. When should you be performing a Pap smear examination? So the American Cancer Society recommends that screening should not be done before 21 years of age. Screening should begin earlier. No, this is wrong actually. This is not wrong actually, but this is not followed in India. In India, we do it after 20 years of age. Screening, but American Society says that screening should begin earlier than age of 21 if the patient is sexually active. But in India, we don't do it. But yes, in US, they say that this should be done. In this case, it should start 3 years after initiation of vaginal intercourse. In India, we don't do it. And there are a lot of religious and cultural beliefs and reasons for not doing it. Once initiated, screening should be performed annually. This holds true in US and India both. After age 30, for women who have had 3 consecutive normal Pap smears, screening frequency may be reduced to every 2 or 3 years. Now this, I am not very well aware of the current situation. The gynecological protocol in India must have changed now. So I request you all to go and check that on the net or ask your friend. But since I did not have too much time, and if I had incorporated everything clinical, then this lecture would have become very long. And then it becomes a problem in uploading also. So please do and check what the current recommendations are for Indian population. However, this thing, I am not going to say after age of 30, because in India they start screening after 30. If I remember very well, it was 35. It might have changed now, but I'm talking about when I was doing my MBBS. But in US, since they are recommending the screening should start at 21 years of age, hence they say that after 30, you can reduce the frequency. In our society, but the reduction of the frequency is the same. That who have had 3 consecutive normal Pap smears, they should then be screened after 3 years. This happens in India also, but the age cutoff is different, as far as I remember. Women who are HIV positive, immunocompromised should be continued annual screening. That is true. Patient tested positive for HPV should continue to be screened indefinitely. That is true. May stop after age 70 if patient is low risk and has had 3 normal Pap smears over the last 10 years. That is also true. Okay. This image I had shown you, I am repeating it again because everything in Pap is eyes cytomorphology. So a basal cell normal looks like this. This is reserve cell hyperplasia. We see a lot of these kind of cells in clusters. Then atypical is of the image I couldn't get. Small cell carcinoma will have, they are also disc cohesive clusters, but they are more dense and stippled as compared to what a basal cell looks. And then there's a small cell carcinoma. Parabasal, I've told you, they mimic a lot of metaplasias, etc. So this is a metaplasia looking like a parabasal cell, but look at the nucleus. It is larger and more coarse as compared to a simple parabasal cell. Of course, then there is carcinoma and non-keratinizing SCCs. They will have extremely high NC ratio. So this is, you'll get trained when you keep seeing the smears. Intermediate smells normal, then some dysplasia, and then infective, and then large cell carcinomas with high NC ratio. Quite easy to differentiate. The only problem you'll have in parabasal and basal cells. And then of course SCC, here you can see a tadpole cell. I'll show you another one later on. Okay. Coming to the images and the problems, the ATP of undetermined significance is there in both squamous as well as glandular epithelium. So I'm going to read it out a bit so that you can understand that the cells resemble the superficial or intermediate layer. The nuclear size is increased 2 to 3 times, and the nuclear boundaries are regular or minimally irregular. So you see this is probably, actually this is somewhat normal, and then this is ascus. Okay, irregular boundary and around 2 to 3 times the size. This is presumably a parabasal cell. Okay. Sketch is when you cannot exclude whether there is a intraepithelial lesion or not, and this is a gray zone area. So to use something that can appear ask H can appear ask us or LCIL to me. So if I have made an image of ask H as this as XX, you might disagree with me, and that is totally okay, because these lesions, these terms are gray zone. In PAP, you can just tell them that it is malignant or not to be very true. Yes, we have distributed it into many categories, but my personal experience is it doesn't matter. Or either it is a high grade HSIL or carcinoma full blown. Otherwise, if you give them ATPR or ASCH or whatever, I feel this is not there in the protocol, but I feel that it should be biopsied, because this is too subjective. Even after the Bethesda capping the size of the nucleus, I still feel, this is my pitfall, my observation, it is very subjective. Especially these three things, ask us, ask H and LCIL, low grade squamous intraepithelial lesion, that is ahead. Still, keeping in vogue with what is being practiced, ask H when you cannot exclude a high grade lesion. The cells resemble parabasal or basal cells. Nuclei are hyperchromatic and uneven, and nuclear membrane is thick and uneven. So you might feel this all is parabasal. As I said, parabasal and basal cells will become the biggest problem for you when you are looking at a SME. So you have to attune yourself to those kind of cells. Okay. Coming to SYN1. SYN1 will have high NC ratio. Cytoplasm is there, and you might feel that ये तो ASCAT से benign लग रहा है, but no. The chromatin over here is not mature. The chromatin over there is relatively mature, even though the NC ratio looks a little subdued over here as compared to those. ठीक है, so to me this is a very good catch. And there's smooth nuclear membrane without indentation. Now, how to remember this? Because I am sure you must be thinking कि if it is malignant, it should be more irregular. SYN1 will have a smoother membrane with coarse chromatin. Reactive or मतलब ASCH or US will have irregular nuclear membrane, but the chromatin will not be that coarse. And this you can only learn by practice. Another thing which I want to tell you, which is not more in SYN1 or 2, but in SYN3 and HL, is the nuclear NC ratio will be more than 3 times the normal. Okay, can be in SYN1 and 2, but in SYN3 definitely more than 3 times the normal. In high grade carcinomas, definitely more than 3 times the normal size of the nucleus. Okay. In 2, again you can see that the chromatin is a bit clumped. Cells are coming in clusters. And the nuclear membrane is thickened, but the irregularity is not there. So here, as you grow towards carcinoma, the nuclear irregularity decreases from us to a carcinoma. But chromatin stippleness or coarseness increases. See, this is 3 high, too high NC ratio, too high for more than 3 times, and chromatin is uniform round but too stippled. Okay, you will get a tadpole cell. See, this is a tadpole cell. And then this is SCC full blown. There is no doubt. You can give it carcinoma, prominent nucleoli and everything, no bridging, etc. Now, why I have kept an adeno in this slide is because this clustering can sometimes be confused with endocervical cells which are showing atypia, or sometimes with a adeno which is giving this pink hue, and you might think that there is squamous metaplasia and this is squamous cluster. That is why, no other reason. So, to differentiate from an endocervical cell, you see the large ovoid round cells, mitotic figures, multiple nuclei, but this cytoplasm is not there. This is more of nucleus. And in this, always see this palisading of nuclei in the cluster. This will not be there in squamous. This has to be in adeno. So this is the differentiation between a non-keratinizing SCC and adeno and atypical endocervical. In keratinizing, you will get a lot of keratin debris and atypical malignant squamous cells. So that is very easy to catch. Coming to adeno, I've shown you a few. See, again, this is, I think, of undetermined significance. Okay? Why? Because you can see that there's ATP and clustering, but compare it with this. It is not that bad. This is invasive adeno. Okay, then another endometrial, and another thing that you confuse, like I had told you in benign lesion, there are endometrial cell balls. Again, you'll confuse it with that over here, endometrial carcinoma. What if it sheds, and if you get a smear where the carcinoma is invading, or that shed cell of the carcinoma is there in the smear, then what? You get to see these kind of vacuolated cells. Okay? These vacuoles in the cells. This is nucleus. This can either be a mucinous adeno or an endometrial. So you can give a DD, you can correlate with the history and then go for the diagnosis. Sometimes you get atypical glandular cells of undetermined significance. Now compare this with this. Fine. Same thing, can be scattered, very high NC ratio, but the chromatin is relatively mature as compared to this, whether it is badly opened with prominent nucleoli. Okay, so this is how you differentiate. Again, a recapitulation, because this I need to keep going with. This is ask us whether nucleus size is around to twice the size of a normal cell. Then this is ASCH, irregular, highly hyperchromatic. LCIL, you see this clearing, binucleate cells, even membrane but opened up nucleoli. High grade, again, look at these clusters, these are all high grade clusters. The NC ratio is too high, I mean you can't confuse it. And then SCCs, you will get these clusters plus these pycnotic nuclei, densely orangophilic cells. They point towards an SCC. This shows tumor diathesis, that the tumor cells are breaking up and dying. Same for adeno, clusters can be atypical, but there's no palisading and the nuclear chromatin appears mature. In situ, you see this kind of palisading, and then malignant cells with tumor diathesis. This image just wanted to show you a nice tadpole cell. That is why I've got this image. Again to recapitulate, this is normal and superficial. Then low grade cell or SIN1. This is low grade. It might have a clearing around the nucleus, and this is how it will look in histopath, starting from the basal area. And this is the histopath image. Then SIN2 and high grade, involving a certain area or the complete epithelium. You might get clustering, but really high NC ratio, and this is how it looks in histopath. This is how a normal cell matures and clusters in cervical neoplasms. These are many cells which continue to grow in cancer with size and shape variation, abnormal chromosomal arrangement, which we read in FISH, which we read in cytogenetics, and irregular borders of the clusters are very significant to catch a malignancy of adeno especially. Again, summarizing a benign tissue cluster. I mean, I wanted to put the slide for the endometrial cells, not for the adenocarcinomas. So that is the endocervical cell. So benign endometrial cell, it will be three-dimensional cluster. Abundant cytoplasm, low NC ratio, it will be smooth, evenly distributed chromatin, and nucleoli will be absent. As you grow towards carcinoma, you will get single to multiple nucleoli. In atypia, it might be small or absent. Chromatin, of course, it will be coarse. It will be extremely coarse in adeno. Irregular nucleus, Here the nuclear membrane is thickened but smooth. So irregularity is somewhere between a benign to malignant lesion. So it becomes as cus, as sketch or endometrial of undetermined. Alright, NC ratio of course will be high, 2:1 with very scant cytoplasm in adenocarcinoma endometrium. Finely vacuolated cytoplasm, discretely vacuolated. Three-dimensional loose aggregates and single cells, small loose cluster or 3D cell balls. 3D cell balls, uniform cluster, highly hyperchromatic nucleus. Always think of adenocarcinoma endometrium. Okay. So this was short, not very long, because most of the PAP is based on the malignant lesions, and this is the spectrum of malignancy that you can catch in PAP, and you have to move around in this only. So this was this. I just wanted to show you these images repeatedly so that this sits in your mind, this fits in your mind. These are my references. None of those images were mine because I'm working in a pediatric setup, so I don't get pap smears now. When I had done my MD, then I used to get them. This is a very good PPT actually by Dr. Monica Nema, and this is there on SlideShare. You can download it or read it or see it. She's done a wonderful job. Most of the images, initial part of my tutorial are from her PPT, and some of them are from the Google images, and of course the text part is whatever is copy pasted is from Google images or ma'am's PPT, but what I've spoken is my experience. So go and please see ma'am's PPT, it's really good. And Grace is good for cytopathology. Bethesda you should know. So I hope this could be of some help to those who wanted me to do a pap smear. And next time I'll be back with a hematopathology tutorial. Thank you so much for your patient hearing, and I hope you enjoyed this.